Crop production for or field practices. Field practices are operations carried out in the field to facilitate proper growth and optimum yield of various crops. By the end of the topic, you should be able to describe the various crop production practices such as crop rotation, field, and post-harvest practices. Define crop rotation. State the importance of crop rotation. Draw a crop rotation program. Distinguish terms used in crop farming. State the importance of mulching in crop production. Describe the importance of various field particles in crop production. Carry out various field practices. State the correct stage for harvesting various crops and describe harvesting practices for various crops. You have already learned how to take care of seedlings in the nursery. When seedlings are ready in the nursery, farmers normally transplant them to the seedbed referred to as the field. After establishment, certain practices are carried out to ensure normal plant growth, and these are the field practices. Field practices are used by farmers to maintain soil fertility. Suggested practical activities in field management practice. Activity 1. Visit the local agriculture show exhibition in your neighborhood. Measure the spacing in the established demonstration plot for the following crops and record your observations: maize, beans, cabbage. Below is a list of various crops and their families. Drag and drop each crop onto its relevant family. From the list below, drag and drop onto the relevant column advantages and disadvantages of mulching. Below is a list of pruning tools. Drag and drop each tool against its relevant use. Crop rotation. It's the growth of different types of crops of different families on the same piece of land in an orderly sequence. It's a field practice used by farmers to maintain soil fertility. In this lesson, you're going to learn the importance of crop rotation. Importance of crop rotation. Maximum utilization of nutrients, control of soil-borne pests and diseases build-up, control weeds, improvement of soil fertility, improvement of soil structure, control of soil erosion, maximum utilization of nutrients, for example, alternating deep-rooted plants with shallow, deep-rooted plants ensures nutrients from different layers are utilized. Factors influencing crop rotation. Factors considered when designing a crop rotation program include weed control, alternate crops that do not share weeds, also those that are easily weeded to be alternated with those that is difficult to weed, alternate deep-rooted crops with shallow-rooted crops, cotton deep-rooted, groundnuts shallow-rooted. Crops of the same family that share pests and diseases should not follow one another in a rotation program. Alternate maize or graminea with beans or legume. Importance of mulching in crop production. Smothers weeds and reduce speed of runoff. The following are the advantages and disadvantages of mulching. The advantages: maintains soil moisture, reduces evaporation rate, control of soil erosion, suppress weed growth, improves soil structure and water holding capacity, and improves soil fertility. Disadvantages: acts as breeding ground for pests, prevents light showers from getting to the soil. It's a fire risk, for example, dry grass. It is expensive to acquire, transport, and apply. Pruning. Pruning involves the removal of the unwanted parts of a plant. The following are the reasons for pruning: to train up the plant so that it can have the desired shape, to remove the diseased, non-productive and unwanted parts of a plant, control of cropping. This removes extra vegetative or unproductive parts in order to maintain correct ratio to ensure uniform bearing in all season or year. To facilitate picking, for example, tea and coffee are pruned to maintain a low plucking table and bearing head. To ease the penetration of the spray and to control pests and diseases. Humid, bushy and dark parts encourage some pests and diseases, for example, Antestia bug and coffee berry disease in coffee. Methods of pruning: pinching out, coppicing or pollarding, and annual pruning. Pruning tools. Below are the tools used in pruning different crops. Pruning saw is used to cut hard branches and stems in coffee and citrus. Pruning knife is used for cutting or pruning tree by use of strokes. Pruning shears are used for trimming hedges. Scatiers are used for cutting soft branches in coffee and citrus. Pruning in tea and coffee. Tree crop branches are cut at specific points for various reasons. Cut surfaces should be protected by paint or Stockholm tar to seal wound. Coffee pruning. Pruning helps to regulate the quality and quantity of coffee berries. Coffee is pruned for the following reasons: to regulate bearing, to remove old and unproductive branches, to make harvesting easy by regulating the heights of trees, to open up the bush and allow better air circulation. This removes microclimate suitable for pest and disease-causing organisms. To open pruning facilities for penetration of sprays and economical use of chemicals. Single stem pruning or SSP. Systems of coffee pruning include the following. Single stem pruning. It involves establishing one permanent stem with a strong framework of primary branches. The main stem is capped out at various heights as the bush grows. The best sucker is allowed to continue growing upwards at each capping. The cappings encourage the development of strong primary branches. First capping is done at 53 centimeters, second at 114 centimeters, and the final at 168 centimeters. The height of single stem bushes ranges between 1.5 centimeters and 1.8 centimeters. In young trees, the initial crops are borne on the primary branches. However, as the bush matures, the main crop is borne on secondary and tertiary branches. Annual pruning in single stem pruning. Annual pruning involves the removal of suckers, dead and damaged branches, those touching the ground, and any other undesirable growth habits. For example, growing inwards, downwards, crossing or touching each other. It is done after harvesting. Advantages of single stem pruning. Allows easy picking and spraying, and it minimizes breakage of branches. Disadvantages of single stem pruning. Requires skilled labor to establish, takes time to bring bushes into bearing, and required shade trees to avoid scorching the top branches and fruits. Multiple stem pruning aims at establishing 2 or 3 main upright stems with laterals to bear the crop. There are 2 types: capped multiple and non-capped multiple system. Capped multiple system, established by capping the main stem at 38 centimeters and allowing 2 to 3 selected shoots to grow to a height of between 1.5 meters and 1.8 meters, after which the bushes are managed in the same manner as in single stem system. Non-capped multiple system, established by capping the main stem at 38 centimeters above the ground and then allowing suckers to grow. 2 or 3 of the suckers are selected and allowed to grow. The crop is borne on the laterals, which are pruned from the base upwards after bearing at least 2 crops. A bearing head of 0.9 to 1.5 meters is left on each stem. Any crossing, dry, or broken laterals are removed. As the stem grows tall, it bends outwards due to the weight of the crop. When old, that is after 4 to 6 years, the stems can be removed. This is called changing the cycle. Annual pruning in multiple stem pruning. Laterals that have borne 2 crops are removed. Also removed are those that are too close, dry or broken, or any other undesirable characteristics. Done after 4 to 6 years. Sucker removal is stopped 18 months before cutting down. 3 suitable evenly spaced suckers are selected. Inward pointing laterals should cut higher towards the end of the cycle. This allows light penetration and encourages the development of healthy suckers. Advantages of non-capped multiple stem system: requires less skill to establish, easy to prune, and does not allow accumulation of CBD due to removal of old stems. Disadvantages of non-capped multiple stem system: breaking of stems and branches, difficulty in gathering the berries from top points, difficulty of spraying the tall bushes, and rotting of stumps with age. Pegging can be done in the following ways: use of hooked pegs, use of rings and pegs, use of parallel sticks or phytos and pegs. Each branch is held down by a single peg measuring 50 centimeters long. A lot of pegs are required. Use individual hooked pegs. Use of rings and pegs. A ring of 30 centimeters diameter made up of thin sticks or thick wire is used. A ring is placed on branches, then gently forced to bend to the sides of bush at an angle of 30 degrees to 45 degrees. 3 pegs are then placed to hold it into position. Using parallel sticks or phytos and pegs. 2 parallel straight light phytos are placed on either side of a row of tea bushes. Pegs are used to hold the phytos down. The tips of the shoots are nipped off to encourage the growth of more shoots. Light sticks of 45 centimeters long are placed under the parallel sticks to hold in position any branches and lie between the phytos. Maintenance of a plucking table. Done to prevent a rise in height of a plucking table. Done by cutting back the tea bush to 5 centimeters above the last pruning height after 2 to 5 years. 3 months later, tipping is done. After many such pruning, cutting back to 45 centimeters above ground is done to maintain plucking height. This is called rehabilitation. It is done after every 45 to 50 years. Pruning mature tea. The following needs to be observed when pruning tea. Side branches below the pruning height should never be cut back. The outside edge of bush should not be cut at a higher level than the center. The bush should from the beginning be pruned parallel with the slope of the ground and not on a horizontal plane. Use a pruning stick. Cut the branches across as far as possible to minimize the area of the wounds. Long sloping cuts increase dieback and risk disease infection. Small branches and twigs on the frame are removed by hand. Do not clean up with a knife after pruning. Protective cape should be left to grow above the frame in Rift Valley and Meru districts during the dry period. Cut branches are left to rot in the field and act as mulch. Use a sharp pruning knife to avoid breaking cuts. After several pruning, cut back the tea bushes to original table. That is, change the cycle. Every 3 years, tea bushes must be pruned back to 5 centimeters above the previous pruning level to avoid the development of detrimental callus tissue.
This is tea that has been pruned recently, and pruning is done after every 4 years so that we can encourage fresh growth of new shoots. And as you can see, we have some new shoots that are coming up. However, as they continue growing, you need to, then you need to encourage lateral growth, and for that, so that you can have many others growing on the sides to spread out the bush, there is a practice that is very important that is called tipping, as will be demonstrated.
Tipping is cutting back shoots to the desired table height. Over here we will tip off this shoot which is above this plucking table. So we cut it like this, then we dispose it. Then the remaining buds, they will now spread over here such that with time it will be covered with more shoots, and it will be now for increased production. There will be more production because there is more tea to.
Tipping. Tipping involves the cutting back of shoots to the desired table height at 20 centimeters above the pegging height. Done 3 months after formation or after the last cutting back. Involves removal of 3 leaves and a bud from each shoot above the required table height level. Y-shaped sticks 50 centimeters high and a long straight stick 2 meters long are used. The straight stick is placed on the Y-shaped stick which touch the ground. Banana stool management. Pruning involves the removal of extra suckers in the stool. 3 to 6 stems per stool is recommended. These should be at different stages of development, one bearing, one half-grown, and the other starting to grow so that they come into bearing at different times. Suckers should be cut deep at the root to stop them growing again. Dry, diseased leaves should be removed using a sickle or a panga. Cutting back in pyrethrum. This involves the removal of old stems down to the level of the top foliage at the end of each cropping year towards the end of the dry season. Cut down dead stalks. Training. Practice of manipulating plants to grow in a designed direction and shape, achieved through staking, propping, and trellising. Training practices. Staking. Supporting plants having weak stems with help of a thin, long, strong stick. Crops staked include tomatoes, garden peas, and some bean varieties. Propping. Providing support for tall varieties of bananas and those that have heavy bunches using forked stakes. Trellising. This provides support for crops with vines using wire or sisal strings. The wires or strings are held by poles at definite spacing.
After transplanting, management practices are carried out on the transplanted plants. Some of these include staking in tomatoes. The importance of staking is to ensure that you get clean fruits, and then it prevents incidences of diseases outbreak. It also facilitates the spraying and harvesting of the crop. This is how the staking is done in tomatoes. First of all, you need to erect a 2 meter stick. The stick should be thin and strong. Then you are going to use a fiber string. This is the procedure. And then you tie it around the stem. Ensure that you have tied the strings around all the stems in the tomato plant. Then you ensure that you have tied the scissor string around every stem on the tomato plant, and ensure that it is firm around the stem. After tying all the scissor strings around the stems, you take all the strings together and bring them on the stick. You tie them around the stick to ensure that the plant grows upright. This also facilitates the spraying and harvesting of the crop, and it encourages the plant to bear more crop.
Earthing up. It improves tuber formation in Irish and sweet potatoes. It promotes seeds production in groundnuts. It improves drainage in tobacco, and it provides support and prevents lodging in maize. Crop protection. Control of weeds. Weeds. Plants growing where they are not wanted. For example, maize in a garden of cabbages. Interplanted crops are not weeds. Control of pests. Pests. These are living organisms harmful to crops. For example, insects, nematodes, thrips, and mites. Damage crops in the fields and stores, reducing quality and quantity of product. Control of diseases. Disease. Any alteration in the state of an organism and functions of a plant or its parts. It's caused by pathogens and nutritional disorders. Deficiency of calcium. This nutrient deficiency in tomatoes result to crop attacked by blossom end rot.
There are very many challenges that a farmer would face when he's trying to grow vegetables in the field. Now, some of these challenges may not be noticeable or may not be obvious to everybody. For example, we have a deficiency of nutrients. With me here, I have some crops that are already experiencing deficiency of nutrients. Now, for example, I have these two plants that I'm holding here. These ones, they are showing deficiency of phosphorus. Phosphorus is one of the major or one of the macronutrients that is usually required by plants during the process of growth. Now, there are other many challenges. There are other many nutrients that could be lacking in many plants. For example, with me here, I have a leaf that is suffering from lack of nitrogen. When you look at this leaf and compare it with leaves of healthy plants, you realize that this plant here has lost its green color. And we know the importance of green color in the process of food, in the processing of food in a plant. Now, the leaf I'm holding on my left hand is a healthy leaf. It's a healthy leaf. This leaf here can do very well in a plant in the process of manufacturing food, and therefore it represents a very healthy plant. While the one on the right hand is representing a plant that has already been affected by deficiency of nitrogen. This leaf here in a plant cannot manufacture enough food, and therefore the plant from which I got it from cannot grow properly. It cannot manufacture food, and it will not grow vigorously. It will not be of the required size. Now, deficiency of nitrogen in a field can be solved by addition of nitrogenous fertilizers, but it is always recommended that if a farmer notices deficiency of elements in his soil, or if he is in doubt, then he should always take his soil to the soil testing laboratory so that he can be given the proper recommendation of what to add in the soil to solve deficiency problems. Now, there are very many pests that affect vegetable crops, and maybe today I'll be able to demonstrate a few that affect cabbage. One of the pests that affect vegetables in the fields are the nematodes. The plants we are having down here is suffering from nematode attack. And as you can see, once I uproot it, you can see that the plant has very few roots. Now, this plant cannot grow properly because it cannot absorb water due to the fact that the roots have been destroyed by the nematodes. This plant will not grow to maturity, but it will dry up and die, and therefore it cannot be productive at all. Now, another pest of importance in vegetable production, and especially in cabbage, is the double black moth. This is a pest you can see. It is feeding on the leaves at this particular moment, and then when this is the larva stage of the moth. The larva stage of the moth. Now, when it feeds on the leaves, it makes holes that we refer to as windows. Now the effect of those holes is to reduce the photosynthetic area, meaning that the plant is unable to manufacture enough food, which normally affects the growth of that particular plant and also affects the amount of production that the farmer is going to get from his cabbage. Aphids usually suck sap from the plants, and as you can see from this cabbage, if you look at how it is growing, you will realize that it is attacked first by the dam moth, black moth, and then we have a lot of infestation of the aphid. Now the cabbage cannot grow well. You can see even the way the leaves are folding, they cannot grow upright. The photosynthetic area is greatly affected. This cabbage.
Harvesting. Harvesting is the final operation in crop production. All the preceding operations have already determined the amount of harvest the farmer can expect. At this stage, no changes in yield can be made, but if done at wrong stage, may cause loss in quantity and quality. Stage and timing of harvesting. Time of harvesting is determined by purpose of the crop, market demand, consumers' preference, concentration of the required chemical, weather conditions, and prevailing market price. Market demand. Consumers' preference is considered before harvesting, for example, green maize or dry grains. Prevailing market price and profit margins. Harvesting in some crops, for example, carrots and some fruits, can be delayed for a month to wait for market prices to improve. Purpose of the crop or use which the crop was intended, for example, maize for silage is harvested just before flowering. The one for grains should be harvested after grains mature. Concentration of the required chemical. For example, ripe berries provide the required caffeine in tea. The two youngest leaves and a terminal bud give the highest quality. Weather conditions. Planting should be timed so that harvesting is done during dry season. This is synchronization of planting and harvesting. Post-harvest practices. These are the practices carried out after harvesting. They include the following: threshing or shelling, commonly done when harvesting cereals. Drying, done after harvesting to store grain at an appropriate moisture content to prevent damage in the store. Vegetables can be sun-dried and packed in airtight containers for use during scarcity. Cleaning, improve keeping quality. For example, fruits canned. Reduce bulkiness before transportation and storage. For example, sugarcane crushed into sugar. Sorting and grading, done according to the quality. For example, in coffee, they are graded as grade 1 and 2, where 1 are big and well ripened, while grade 2 are under or overripe, diseased and small. Dusting, application of chemical powder on seeds to prevent storage pest attack. Processing, transformation of a raw material into final products so as to improve the flavor of products, for example, tobacco and tea, and improve keeping quality, for example, fruits canned. Packaging, placement of produce into containers for storage, sale, or transportation. It reduces damage to products, makes it easy for farmer to quantify and set prices. Storage. Storage is the keeping of farm produce after harvesting in good conditions. This is necessary to ensure availability of products all the year round and improves conditions to prevent losses. Farm produce can be stored in sacks, in containers, or bulk in various types of stores. Characteristics of an ideal store. Ideal store should be clean, dry, free from pests and diseases, waterproof, rodent-free, and easy to control pests and diseases. Types of stores. Traditional granaries, which are elevated above the ground by posts and made of wooden twigs woven together and roofed with thatching. Disadvantages of traditional storage: rats and weevils attack, rooting of grains, and limited in size. Preparation of the store. Cleaning the store, maintaining, for example, repair or replacing worn-out parts, dusting, and clearing vegetation around the store.